All right, welcome on. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Again, welcome on. Holding by Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Do apologize for the delay. A little bit out of my control here. Again, welcome on. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 17. We're in verse 2. That is where we're holding. The Torah says, verse 1, Hashem Moshe Lamor, the Aaron, the Banov, the Kol Bnei Yisrael, this is what God commanded, right? God spoke to Moses saying, speak to Aaron, speak to his sons, all the children of Israel, and say to them, this is the matter that God commanded. We're going to see verse 3, even though we're not going to see Rashi on it. So afterwards, so there, what did God command? He says any man from the house of Israel who's going to slaughter an ox or a sheep or a goat in the camp was going to slaughter outside the camp. Right? That's what we're talking about over here. Slaughtering outside the camp, slaughtering animals where it'd be forbidden. Right, be death penalty certainly for a Kohen to slaughter outside the camp. It's only certain places where they're allowed to slaughter, etc. So we're in the middle, or really the beginning, of this Ramban. Nachmanides over here. Well, we mentioned last week that sacrifice, there's only certain animals to sacrifice, right? And those animals were an ox, a goat, or a sheep and a goat, and they were sacrificed at the opening of the tent of meeting. That's where they were sacrificed, and the fat was brought up, the blood was brought up, and they ate them. They ate them according to whatever you're allowed to eat, whatever you have to give the Kohen, and maybe the owner of the animal also gets to eat from it, depends what type of sacrifice, etc. And the Ramban then said, if you shecht it, if you slaughter it somewhere else, in any other place, what happens? So you're liable to be spiritually cut off. So one thing we saw, certainly beyond the shadow of a doubt, is you can't do what you want. When you want. The Kohen has to be very careful because there's certain things that a Kohen can do that if they sacrifice in the wrong place, this is a good example, right? Get spiritually cut off. Other things, maybe they get death penalty, right? Or we see that, let's say, an ordinary Jew, let's say he's not a Kohen, right? When the temple existed, if he would ritually slaughter an animal, liable for death penalty, right? There are certain things, again, where you're allowed to kill the animal, and what sacrifice it's for, there are specific things we mentioned by Levites. Levites have their certain jobs. Some Levites, their job was to sing in the temple. Other Levites, they had to watch the gate or open the gate, close the gate, whatever it was. But those Levites who close the gates don't sing. And those that sing don't close the gate. Why not? We spoke about this, right? There's an idea that even though if you're a Levite or if you're a Kohen, right, not all Kohanim do the same thing, right? But not all Levites do the same things for themselves, right? So just learning this a while ago, that was a few weeks back, that this case of Levites, it's because you come from the tribe of Levi, you have the status of a Levite, right? Let's say. You don't have the right to do whatever you want. Certain Levites had certain jobs, right? We just read a few weeks back that the Levites, some of them carried the vessels of the temple, of the tabernacle. Some of them held the ark. They didn't do the same things. Certain families given certain jobs. So what do I see? Not everyone's created equal. Not very. What's the word? Not very PC to say, right? Certainly in today's day and age. But nonetheless, everyone has different jobs. Kohen can't do what a Levi does. a Levite does. A Levite, even if they come from the same tribe, Levite can't do what a Kohen does. Levites can't do what other Levites do. Yeah, and in Israel, anyone else can't do what a Levite or a Kohen does. Right? And there, the punishment could be very severe. Right? And simply speaking, we would say, what's the obligation over here? You got to listen to what God says. Right? Bottom line, can't do what you want. Right? As we said many times. We mentioned this many times. It's not about what's fair and unfair. This is a God-given book. We understand it's a God-given book. What God says goes. That's it. Right? There are no questions over here. Right? We have to understand maybe why. Try and see what's behind it. Right? But it's a divine command. Right? What did we just say before? God spoke to Moshe saying, speak to Aaron, speak to his sons, speak to the entire Jewish people. God speaking to Moses to give it over to everybody else. Right? That's the law. That's the law, not for us to question. Now, doesn't mean I don't have to understand it. No, I have to understand it. Right? Best of my ability, try and understand. And even if the rabbis gave, reasons, or some reasons why, certain mitzvahs, doesn't mean it's this reason. Doesn't mean it's the only reason. Certain things rabbis gave a lot of reasons for. Okay. But who says any of those reasons are the reason? Right? Again, doesn't mean we don't have to delve into it. Doesn't mean we don't have to try and understand it. But we have to realize it's a divine book. And the more we realize it's a divine book, I'm not going to question why I have to do it. Okay, maybe it's for this reason, that reason, another reason. Bottom line is divine decree. That's the bottom line. And as Ramosha Feinstein, a blessed memory, the Torah giants, in America, according to everyone in the last generation, was the Torah giant in the last generation. In his commentary on Chumash, Drash Moshe brings down in Parshas Korah, and he said that was Korah's mistake. That was essentially Korah's mistake, right? What was the mistake? The mistake was he didn't internalize the message. He saw the miracles in Egypt. He saw the miracles, by the manna that fell, by what happened at Mount Sinai. Carried the ark, and he didn't die, right? But he didn't understand somehow. Right, a little bit hard to understand, right? But he didn't understand that God spoke to Moshe, Moshe spoke to us, right? And gave it to the Jewish people. That he made a big mistake and it cost him his life, cost him the life of his kids, right? And 250 great men that he influenced. So comes on the Ramban further, and the Ramban here says, what do I see? First thing I understand is if a Kohen kills an animal, wants to sacrifice an animal, right, outside the preferred area, i.e. outside the tent of meeting, what's its liability? Liability is kares, get spiritually cut off, right? That's punishment. You get spiritually cut off, right? Even, let's say, not a sacrifice. Let's say it's not going to be used for a sacrifice, right? They're gonna kill the animal there. And let's say they're going to use it for, they're going to eat it, right? Let's say, right? So they're going to use it for non-sacrificial things, whatever it's going to be. It's not going to be sanctified. Also forbidden, right? If you're going to tell me they want to sanctify it, right? It has to be done in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, which it became later. So that I know is forbidden. He's telling, so the Ramban here says, even if you're not going to sanctify it, you're going to eat the meat yourself, or whatever you're going to do with it. It's not sanctified over here. You still can't sacrifice it. You still can't kill it in that area. You got to kill it in a specific area, right? So that's the first thing he says. And he says, and that's the reason. One was sanctified to God. They spilled the blood. Right, and they put the blood on what? The Kohen took the blood, put it on the altar, and then there was incense on the altar, and then you had the fats, right? Then you had the fats and all that, right? That went on. Then there's a warning. Oh, what's the warning? Then there's a warning. You don't make the altar outside where it's supposed to be. Right, the Thanksgiving offerings have to be in a specific place. The other offerings, the sin offerings, free will offerings, other things have to be in a specific place, right? So over here, he's saying when you have it sanctified, the blood's going all over the place. You have the, what do you call it? You have the incense, right? You have the incense and all that going on the altar. It's got to be in the right place. It's got to be in the right place. Or in a place, let's say outside, let's say it's not there, and it was permissible. There was a certain time in history that it was permissible. Person could offer an offering on their own private altar, right? There was a time in history that could be done. So okay, so you're gonna tell me something to be sanctified and given there, that would be okay when it would be permissible, right? But it has to be done. It has to really be done by the tent of meeting. And right, that's where it has to be done, right? It could be when they had private altars, that's a different issue, right? That's definitely a different issue, right? When it was permissible, but there were times you couldn't do that either, right? It had to be in the specific place, right? That's one thing. And that's why it says in the book of Deuteronomy, the Ramban here says, chapter 12, verses 10 and 11. It says, when you go over the Yarden, right? When you cross the Jordan, right? And you live in the land, you're going to go to the place that God chose for you. And there you're going to bring burnt offerings, you're going to bring other type of offerings, right? But you're going to bring it in that place, i.e. that place, i.e. what does that mean? The chosen place. It's going to be the temple in Jerusalem, right? That's what it's referring to. And you're going to bring it there. And it says over there in verses 13 and 14, you should be careful when you bring it up, in the right place. Because you don't bring it up in the right place, the problem, right? Because he says it's going to be forbidden to kill it outside. What does it mean outside? It means outside the tent of meeting. That is going to be forbidden. That is going to be forbidden at the time the temple stood. But when it was permissible, when you didn't sanctify, this animal per se, use it for your own, for your own benefit, whatever it is. That's what it says in verse 15, right? This thing you're gonna eat yourself, i.e., what does that mean? What does that mean? That doesn't mean that you're prevented from ever killing an animal, and not sanctifying it, in one place, right? It means, what does it mean over there? That you shouldn't be prevented from that when it would be permissible. But he says at the time when you weren't allowed to kill animals at all, right? Certainly for food, that's where all the vegans, all the vegetarians are going to say, see, don't you see what the Torah says? Go back to Genesis. We were only allowed to eat what? Fruits and vegetables. We weren't allowed to kill animals for food. But God saw in the future, right? He saw that we're going to want food. We're going to desire meat. So he made it permissible in a permissible way, right? Made it in a permissible way over here. So he says, so again, so the vegetarians could say, see, but at the beginning of creation, before the floods, what do I have? What do I have? The vegans will say, look, you weren't allowed to kill animals for food. No matter where you killed them, even if it was permissible. Yeah, you weren't allowed to do it. So you see, on a higher level, it's better, to be vegetarian, right? They would claim, because it's forbidden to kill animals for the sake of meat. Only problem is, later on, comes on the Torah and says I'm allowed to do that, right? And certainly the meat I can eat, and certainly on Shabbos festivals, it's for to eat meat, right? So you might say, well, at the beginning of time, people shouldn't have eaten meat. Okay, so what? So now God comes back and says that no, you're allowed to eat meat, right? Not a problem as long as you do it the right way. So it explains over there. Verse 20, because when God opened it up, the what do you call it? The boundaries, so to speak, meaning that it was forbidden at the beginning of the desert. Right? Really, they shouldn't have been allowed to eat meat. But God then said, made it light on them that they were allowed to bring these sacrifices to the tent of meeting, and also allowed to eat meat. Right? But after that, it became permissible to kill animals for the sake of meat. So now the question is, do they have an obligation only to kill the animals in the tent of meeting, or could they kill the animals anyway? So essentially, they're allowed to kill the animal anyway, right? Because it says after the fact that the boundaries were opened, they made the boundaries bigger, so to speak. Comes along God and says, you're allowed to eat meat, you're allowed to kill it, you're allowed to shecht it in your gates. Yeah, that's meat you're allowed to eat. Very good. That's meat you're allowed to eat. What about sanctified meats? What about meat you want to give to the temple, or you want to, I just gave it away. You're not allowed to shecht it there. You're not allowed to shecht it any way you want. Were you obligated to shecht it? We're obligated to kill it, ritually slaughter it, let's say better. We're allowed to do it only by the tent of meeting, or in a case where it was permissible to ritually slaughter on your own altar. But there was a certain time you were allowed to do that. But when you weren't allowed to do that, it's forbidden. Right? It's forbidden. But here we're talking about a time where you're not sanctifying it. It's not going to the temple for any sacrifice. You're doing it for yourself. So therefore, where can I shecht it? Wherever I want. Right? I can shecht it in my gates. Ritually slaughter it in your gates. But I'm not allowed to sanctify. I'm not allowed to say this is going to be for the sake of the temple. Right? Certainly not. Right? Not going to say that. Right? Definitely not going to say that. And that's why I mentioned over here. Right? That's why I mentioned over here. Right? That it was ritually slaughtered in the camp, or it was slaughtered outside the camp. Right? It had to be slaughtered somewhere. So it mentions over there that if I ritually slaughter it outside the camp, then I'm going to have to bring it. Then I'm going to have to bring it to the tent of meeting. I'm going to have to bring it. You're going to be liable. You're definitely going to be liable over here for the sake of what? For the sake of being spiritually cut off, right? But at the same time, you brought it back to the tent of meeting, right? Even though, says the Ramban, they permitted this meat when they opened up the boundaries, so to speak. Right? In other words, outside the tent of meeting, you weren't sanctifying it. Because you weren't sanctifying it, when did you do it? Sorry, what are you doing? You're eating it for the sake of your own desire. So that's okay, because you're not sanctifying it. Right? 100%, you're not sanctifying it. So therefore what? That was only at the time when they went into the land of Israel. But when they didn't go into the land of Israel, right? They didn't have a Beis Hamikdash yet. They didn't have a temple yet. They didn't accept it. They didn't permit it in the deserts, right? Even outside the camp. Even if you wanted to eat for yourself outside the camp, they didn't allow. Right? That they didn't allow. But that was only in the desert. But once they came in the land of Israel, it was a different story. And he says that's what it means over here. And that's what Rabbi Yishmael explains, that really eating meats at the outset was really forbidden. Right? God forbade, killing animals for the sake of meat. Right? But once they came into Israel, once you had a Beis Hamikdash, then they'd be allowed to eat meat, but not in the desert. Right? They weren't allowed to kill animals in the desert. What about the quail? What about chicken? God gave them chicken till it was like coming out of their nose, so to speak. Okay, that was different. Right? That was different. He's just telling you he's just giving you the groundwork over here. Right? And what it means that if you sacrifice it outside, right, outside the camp, you did it in the wrong place, or when you're allowed to eat meat, right? That's what he's setting up over here. Right? Then the Ramban says, we'll just finish this Ramban and take some questions here. says that there's a medrash and Devarim Rabbah, right? Book of Deuteronomy is the medrash that says there were many things that God forbade, but they changed his mind. And somewhere in another place in the Torah, he permitted it. Right? Very interesting. Right? This is a good example. Right? One place says you're not allowed to kill animals for the sake of food. Another place says it's okay. They said you should know that God forbids to ritually slaughter meat for Jews to eat. When did he forbade it? Until they came to the tent of meeting, right? The tent of meeting, they were allowed to, but before that it was forbidden. How do I know? How do I know that's true, says the Medrash? The Medrash tells me, oh, where do I know it from? Because it says over here, right? It says over here, right? You can't ritually slaughter it outside the camp. It has to be done inside the tent of meeting. Right? So now it's an interesting question. Right? Very interesting question here. And that is, God said at the beginning it was forbidden. God saw it was forbidden. He didn't want them to eat meat. Why did he allow them to eat meat? Why did he change his mind? Yeah. Why did God change his mind over here? What would I say? Right? What would I say? God changed his mind. Not that he didn't know what the future was going to bring. Right? That we could easily ask. Right? That we could easily ask. You know, it says, let me just quote it properly. Beginning of Genesis, 4 parshas Noah, it says, chapter 6, verse 6, book of Genesis, Hashem reconsidered having made man on earth. He had heartful sadness. And then God says, I'll pour out man, etc. Right? Genesis chapter 6, verse 6. Okay, very good. What does it mean he has heartfelt sadness? How can God be sad over here? How in the world can God be sad? Yeah. So, the question obviously is, God doesn't change his mind. God knows the future. If God knows the future, how can it be? How can it be? He says, I have regret I made man. God should never regret anything. The Rashi on the spot says one of the Romans, I think it was Turnus Rufus to Rebbe Akiva, I'm not 100% sure. One of the Romans came to one of the rabbis and asked this question. At least they knew Tanakh properly. Not like today. But, they asked the question. They said, if God doesn't change his mind, God doesn't make mistakes. So why does it say over here? Why does it say over there that he has regrets? God doesn't have regrets. God doesn't make mistakes. There's no remorse over here for creating man. Right? So what's the answer? Right? So we'll say it's Rebbe Akiva. I'm not 100% sure it's him, but let's say one of the rabbis answered and said, did you ever have a child? So he says, yeah. He said, what'd you do when you had a child? He said, I made a big celebration. I gave out Cuban cigars. Right? Big celebration. Very good. So Rebbe Akiva asked him, he says, don't you know? Eventually that child's going to grow up and die. So towards Rufus answers, you're right. I'm aware of that. So I'll be happy when I'm supposed to be happy. I'll be sad when I'm supposed to be sad. Rebbe Akiva answers the same thing. When man does the right thing, God is happy. When man does the wrong thing, God can be sad. Does God know the future? Of course he knows the future. Right? It's one of the 13 principles. One of the 13 principles of faith of the Rambam. God knows the thoughts of men. God knows past, present, and future. When you say God's name, Baruch Atah Hashem, God the source of all blessing. Hashem Elokeinu, God Hashem, i.e., God of compassion, and Elokeinu, the God of divine justice. So when you say Hashem Elokeinu, or you say the name Hashem, what's our intention? Simple explanation: past, present, future. That God knows past, present, future. So any blessing we make, we should have that in mind. We should have that in mind when we make the blessing. Now, that being said, right, God doesn't make mistakes. Right? We understand God doesn't make mistakes. So I'll take it one step further. Gemara Megillah says that the Egyptians are drowning, right? And the angels want to sing Shira. They want to sing and dance. God says, "What do you mean? What do you mean? My creation is drowning. How can you sing? How can you sing and my creation is drowning?" Now everyone agrees there was a divine judgment on the Egyptians. Right? Egyptians went way too far than they should have. They deserve to be punished, severely punished. God says a number of times, the book of Exodus, I'm going to show my might. The whole world's going to know my might. I will destroy the world power at the time. But everyone asks the question, don't they deserve to be punished? Yeah. Everyone agrees they deserve to be punished. No question. Do they deserve, so when God dies, God can be sad. At the same time, why can't the angels sing? Because God says, my creation is drowning. How could you sing? But what's the obvious? So there's a whole question over here. Aren't we supposed to be happy when our enemies get destroyed? Yeah, definitely says that in a number of places. Other places it says you shouldn't be happy when that happens. Right? I mean, you should be happy God did judgment. That's true. That's 100% true, but should I be singing and dancing? So it seems to be a contradiction in a few places. But even without that, God needs to punish them. They're getting a severe punishment, an unbelievably severe punishment. Yeah. So why is God sad? Why should God be sad? No, he's doing what they deserve, measure for measure. But I'll even take it another step further. It says when we say every day, we say the song of the sea that we read every morning, right? That we say every day. Say it on Shabbos as well. It says over there, the Egyptians got spit up on dry land. Now I would have said, if I were playing God, put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache, and I would say, come on, let the fish eat them like Bin Laden. Took Bin Laden, threw him overboard, very good. Let the whales eat them, the sharks eat them, but all these fish, they'll have food for a long time. And a lot of these people are gonna die. Why'd they get spit up on dry land? Why did God allow them to be buried? Because, in the plague of darkness, what did they say? They said their God is fighting against us because of that recognition. Very hard to understand in certain ways. Because of that recognition, they had the right to deserve to be buried. We never would have said such a thing. We would have said, let them die. Look what they did to the Jewish people. 20%, only 20% of the Jews come out of Egypt. Yeah, 80% died by the end of the plague of darkness. About 8 million, 9 million people. They don't come out of Egypt. I mean, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. What happened? You don't allow them to get eaten by the fish? Because they said, their God is fighting against us. They have a right to be buried. I made a whole video on this on my YouTube channel, Beyond Orthodox Conversion in Judaism. Take a look over there. One of the parts of the book of Exodus. Yeah, you look over there. That's hard to understand. Very hard to understand. We would have all said, let them get eaten by fish. They deserve to be buried. Why do they deserve to be buried? Right? The commentaries say, why? Because God was, God had to punish them. He severely had to punish them. Okay. Not only they died, he decimated the whole country, the world power. Totally wiped them out. That's why God leaves Pharaoh alive in order to see the destruction. And then he goes into exile and he becomes the king of Pago and Nineveh. So in the book of Jonah, when Jonah the prophet comes, and tells them, listen, God of Israel is going to come and wipe this place out, they all repent. But he got the message. He finally got the message. Yeah, he got demoted to Pago, but he got the message. Essentially, he got the message. They had to witness its destruction. But any of us would have said they deserve to be buried. Why do they deserve to be buried? Why in the world should they be buried? Commentary's answer. Unbelievable. What do the commentaries say over here? Commentaries say, you know what? Because, God had to wipe them out. True. But at the same time, God got acknowledged over here. They acknowledged him, even though they're still trying to run after the Jews. Yeah. They acknowledged him and understood and finally admitted this is his power. And this is what he's done. And God says, because of that, that was enough. That was enough to warrant them to be buried. Mind-boggling idea, right? So we'll take one small idea. We'll take one small idea from this. And one small idea from this is that a person may think, oh, look, I did this wrong, that wrong, the other thing wrong, and continue to do things wrong. Why should God have mercy on us? So let me ask you, you think you're any worse than the Egyptians? You're going to put yourself in that category, right? That you're like the Egyptians, that you're so bad, they even got allowed to be buried. Even though God annihilated them. They had the ability to be buried. Are we that bad? Oh, I don't think we're that bad. I don't think we're that bad at all, even if we're close to the king. I don't think we're close to what the Egyptians did to the Jewish people, physically and spiritually. Not even close. So we should be jumping up and down. We should be whistling Dixie over here, doing the moonwalk. I don't know how to do any of those. But even so, this should be unbelievable. We should be smiling. We should have great joy over here. Why? Because you see how far God's mercy can go. They deserve to be punished, nothing to talk about, right? There's nothing to talk about. But to be buried, right? God's going to bury them. He's going to allow them to be buried because they recognized him. Look what they did, physically and spiritually. If we were all playing God, we would never do such a thing. We'd want to torture them to know tomorrow. Don't just let the fish eat them. Oh, we're going to torture them, right? Oh, you got to say it's taking revenge. Well, this might be permissible over here without even getting to that. We would want them to suffer like they made the Jews suffer. Right? See, that's the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. Right? Why do I say that? Go back to the Holocaust. Go back to recent history. When they finally got liberated, the Jews that survived, they finally got liberated. Yeah, they had the ability. A lot of Nazis were taken prisoner. Right? They had the ability to take revenge. They had the ability to take revenge. And they didn't. Now imagine what a person had gone through. Lost their wife, lost their husband, lost their kids, were tortured. Yeah, maybe they did experiments on them, but they survived. Miraculously, they survived. Wouldn't you think they had an opportunity? Take some of these men, burn them alive. Who knows what? I mean, we can think of good things, good things to torture them with. Even if they didn't torture the Jews with that, why not? Let's have some fun. Oh, Mr. Mengele want to do scientific experimentation. Let's see. Maybe we'll do some things to you. Get a little bit even. Yeah, but they understood that's not going to bring their loved ones back. Yeah. They also understood that's not what a Jew does. A Jew will defend himself, he has to. We are not, we're pacifists in general. Doesn't mean we're just going to go to slaughter for nothing. But in general, we don't normally start up with people. You walk into a religious neighborhood, 10, 11 o'clock at night. You don't have to worry, you're going to get pickpocketed or mugged. Right? Very safe. Most cases. There's no crime. Right? Here in Israel, in a religious neighborhood, if God forbid there's crime, it's not from their own people. It's either from secular Jews or Arabs. Can it happen? A religious Jew do something? Yeah, it could happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. Right? I'm not saying it can't happen. But 99% of the time, it's not from them. Why? Because if you hold by the Torah, you do what the Torah says. You're not going to do that. You're just not going to do that. So that's why there's no crime in these places. There might be other elements, okay? But that has nothing to do with religious Jews. So therefore, if they're born and bred, it's part of their DNA. Part of their DNA not to take revenge. As the Torah says, you're not allowed to. We'll get there. I don't know when, but maybe another 10 years, we'll see the rate we're going. But nonetheless, we don't take revenge. So that's a mind-boggling idea. As weak as they were at that time, you don't think 10 of them gang up on one person, they hold him down, they beat this guy silly, they beat this Nazi silly. Yeah. Do all kinds of things. Why wouldn't that be okay? Why wouldn't it be okay? You know why? Because Jews don't do it. It's not part of their nature. Now, maybe some of them did, okay, but can understand why. Potentially you can understand why, but the vast majority didn't. It wasn't just because, they're so weak in this and that. It's not part of their nature. But we can explain it rationally. They might have seen all these different horrors and this and that, but they know two wrongs don't make it right. They know two wrongs don't make it right, even if they had a right to do it. It's not going to bring back their loved ones. But what about the pain they went through? Again, I'm not denying that. They went through a tremendous amount of pain, for sure. No question. But, that makes us different. Our soul makes us different. Even if rationally, we could say why they would have a right 100% to do whatever they did to their Nazi captives. Nothing to talk about. And if people did it, we wouldn't say anything bad about them. No matter what they did to them, we wouldn't say anything bad about it because of what they went through, right? Which we can't imagine. We can't imagine. But at the end of the day, they also understood. It's not going to bring back their loved ones, and they're not going to turn themselves into the barbarians that the Nazis were, and the animals that the Nazis were. All right, that's probably more what's behind it. We're not going to be like them. Because they were animals. That's what they were. Animals. That's what Amalek is. Right? These atheists today. They're animals. That's what they are. Because they have no moral compass. They have nothing telling them what's right or what's wrong. Whatever my heart says. Right? Whatever's in my heart, that's what I'll do. Really? So euthanasia becomes a mitzvah today. Mercy killing becomes a mitzvah. Sorry, it's murder. We hold across the board, it's murder. No matter why. It's murder. Yeah, that's barbaric. Yeah, and half starving people and letting them die by cancer is also barbaric, right? Secondary cause of cancer that people die from, pneumonia. Yeah, somebody goes into hospice. What do? They give them a certain amount of nutrients to live, barely. Can't starve them. That would be murder. But there's a very fine line. So their immune system is shot. Once their immune system is shot, yeah, they're barely giving them anything to survive. And what do they die from? Secondary cause. But that's not murder. That's not murder. It's what we call a groma. It's something that is causative, but it's not direct. Right? It's indirect. So therefore, they wouldn't be liable. Now, there are cases where, sure, guarantee, people are murdered. And they're not fed. So there's one thing, and this is a whole different discussion. There's another thing, a person signs a DNR, do not resuscitate. That's one thing. But willingly not giving enough food and nutrients, that's murder. That's murder. So everyone knows a person go to hospice, they're going to die, essentially. Right? Most people understand that. But you have to give them enough nutrients to live. Right? So you say, well, that's what they're doing. Okay. Right? So the question is that murder? Because the secondary cause, they're not dying from cancer. They're dying from something else. Now, if they die from cancer, okay. But if they die from secondary cause, what's the secondary cause? Pneumonia or any other, whatever. Any other, disease that they get, their immune system is so weak, they can't fight it. Is that direct? Nope. It's not direct. If it's not direct, can you get them on murder? No. What about according to heaven? No. Right? A murder. Right? At the same time, someone decides they don't want to help themselves. Okay, that's their choice. That's not suicide, though. They're just not taking active steps. I know of a few stories. Call the room. I know a few stories. One story is someone had a stroke. So I know two people had strokes. I'll tell the second story first. First person or second person had a stroke, and they didn't really want to rebuild it. I don't know if it's lack of just the will to live, or they couldn't live the same way, or whatever the case is. So what happened? They atrophied and they died months later. They don't want to go with physical therapy. I mean, they could have lived. They wanted to, right? But they chose not to. They chose not to do anything. Is that suicide? No. Suicide has to be direct. This is indirect. And then, who says they have to jump through hoops to try and save their life? Okay, it's a different issue, right? I'll tell you a second. I'll tell you the first case. First case is someone had a stroke, something snapped in their head, and life didn't really seem to have so much meaning because they couldn't do Sudoku or crossword puzzles. That's what someone told me. It's a good thing they couldn't see me. I would burst out laughing. Like, that's quality of life. Can't do Sudoku. Can't play Sudoku. Well, life's not worth living. What did the person do? They basically refused to eat. They drank a little bit. They refused to eat. Basically got a hospice in the house. Eventually went to the hospital and they died. A few months later. 2, 3, 4 months later. Something like that. Just got weaker. And they died. Now the question is, how far do they have to go to keep themselves alive? So if they choose not to do anything, right? No, someone else story had, I don't know, some sort of cancer. I forget where it was. They decided not to treat it. 9 months. Right? 9 months, I think, after that. All right, now another story. Give another example. Someone that's happened about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that somebody had a kidney transplant. They're living fine with this kidney. Then the other kidney started to fail, and they weren't a candidate for another kidney transplant. They were already older, I think in the mid-70s. They're already older, much older. So the only other alternative was dialysis. They don't want to live according to dialysis, right? Dialysis is not I wouldn't say it's a great way to live, right? By any stretch, very true, right? But at the same time, they didn't want to go on dialysis. Now, if you have kidney problems and you don't go on dialysis, right? What's going to happen? You die. So they stayed at home, did whatever they wanted, try to deal with the pain in different ways. And 2 months later, 3 months later, they died. All right. So I asked my Rebbe this question, and this is really the answer to all these questions, all these situations. I said, is that called suicide? And he said, no. He said, if they're preventing themselves, the Gemara says, if you could get medicine and you chose not to, and then you die from it, okay, it's your choice, right? It's not active. You're not doing something active. You do something active, that's murder, right? Mr. Kevorkian, right? You pour it in, it's murder. Pour in the poison, it's murder. You do it to yourself, it's murder. Someone else does it to you, it's murder. Even with your consent, doesn't matter, right? That's considered murder. So I asked my Rebbe, I said, I don't understand. I said, they're causing it. He said, no, it's indirect. 100% it's indirect. They're just choosing not to do anything to save themselves. So he says, so he said that in a case where he said, you don't have an obligation over here. If you want to, go through heroics and try and do as much as you can, okay. And if you don't want to go through extra suffering, dialysis, yeah, it's painful. You don't want to go through these other things, you don't have to. Right? Even if it's going to prolong your life. Right? You don't have to. There is an issue. I just listened to something a while ago. There is an issue. There is an issue where if a person, let's say, you have to have someone obviously you trust if you sign a health proxy. Right? If you sign a health proxy, you have to have someone, a rabbi, a family member, somebody, that if you're incapacitated, they have a right to call the shots. Because if you leave it open, then, it's up to the hospital. Wherever you go, it's up to them. And what are they going to do? They'll kill you, pretty much. They're not going to do anything to try and save you. For sure not. And if you're at a certain age, there are stories. I mean, I don't want to get too far off topic here, but there are stories where where let's say a person suffering, we'll use cancer as an example. That was the example. A person suffering from cancer, and the hospital is basically sending in hospice people to convince a person to die. And they're taking up extra space, different things. Why go through all these heroics and different things? Like basically trying to convince them to die. Now this person, asked the doctor, asked their, rabbinic authority who they went to, and they said, yeah, if you leave them in that hospital, they will die. They will see to kill them. They'll go downhill. So they got, this person, got their mother out of the hospital. They got transferred to another hospital. Person came out of the hospital after that, sometime later, lived another 10 years. This other hospital, they already ready to put her on the ground. They were already digging the grave for her, getting her ready, bringing all these psychologists, different things to convince her to die. What goes on? That's the way of the world. So if a person has a health proxy, you better have someone you trust. If you get incapacitated, because they could kill you. You go to a hospital, they could definitely kill you. I don't think there's anything to talk about. Yeah, they're not there. I mean, they're quote unquote, to save lives. But what's their definition of quality of life? A person's 92 years old. They're very frail. Let's say they have a heart attack. They have a health proxy. No one's in charge. They're like, are they going to do heroics over here? Someone's like 92? I don't think so. I definitely don't think so. Yeah, they'll do what they think is best in their eyes. How they view it morally. Well, they're not looking at it from a Torah perspective. They're not looking at it from a moral perspective. It's like doctors are the judge, yesh din v'yesh dayin, right? There's a judge, there's judgment, and they're the ones pulling the trigger. And they're the ones supposedly calling the shots. That's why the Gemara in Kedushin says, Tov shebarofim legehenim, even the best of doctors go to hell. Why? Why the best of doctors? Yeah. Because, if doctors don't have any moral compass, and a lot of them don't, yeah, so they'll do whatever they want. They think they're in charge, right? They think they're in charge. So the Torah says, the Book of Exodus, the end of the verse, it says, Yirape, they have a right to heal. What are they allowed to heal? What are doctors allowed to heal? They're allowed to heal what Monty Python would call a flesh wound. Anyone knows the reference? A flesh wound, something on the body they could heal. But what about someone who's a surgeon, cuts up the person, does whatever they do, stitch up the person, what can they say? They could say, because of this person's health and this and that, this is what should happen. Could be some side effects, could be this, could be that, right? But they could say, according to statistics, this is what should happen. Now, can that change? Yeah. Can the body just totally shut down after that, even if it goes against all the statistics? Yes. But they have to admit, most of them would certainly admit, when they close up the person, they say there's nothing more we can do. Now, if there's an infection, they have to open them up again and treat it. Okay. Yeah. But they don't have the ability to heal on the inside. Okay, whatever any doctor tells you, they have no ability whatsoever. Whatever they do, open heart surgery, kidney transplant, other things, they can tell you this should happen, that should happen, the other thing should happen. Now, they might be right. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They could be right, based on their knowledge. Okay. But when they stitch up the person, all things being equal, they're out of the picture. They can conjecture at best and say, based on this, based on that, this is what should happen. Okay. Right? I'm not a doctor. I didn't play one on TV. So they have a lot more knowledge than I do. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. So they'll say this could this should happen. And if it doesn't, or there are complications, they said, yeah, there could be complications, could be things that are unexpected. But once they sew up the person, they'll tell the family, how many times have people heard this? We've done everything we can do. We've done everything we can do. What does that mean? It means they have no control. At least they admit that. At that point, they have no control. They can say, according to this, we see it this way. Statistically, it should be like this. Okay. Yeah, but at the same time, they don't know. They can't say 100%. A person could be healthy and there could be complications. Totally be complications. I know of a case, couldn't get a diagnosis. Finally, finally did a PET scan, and then, it took a few weeks to finally figure out this and that. Yeah, they do a PET scan. They say, oh, now we see what's going on. They found lymphoma, but this is already, an advanced stage, right? So what did they say? So the doctor said, based on what we see, this is terminal, but it's not imminent. Yeah, 6 months, a year, it's not imminent. Yeah, the next day the person died. In the middle of the night, all their organs shut down. Now, this is what they said. This is what they said. Yeah. Make such a big mistake. They said 6 months to a year. They didn't say anything's imminent. You got to rush to the hospital. Only in the middle of the night when all the organs shut down. Was that expected? Well, it wasn't expected. Totally wasn't expected. Okay, so you're going to say doctors are not infallible. They can make mistakes. Okay. Yeah. They don't know what's going, they can see from this, it's a PET scan, so you see what's going on inside. Right? It's highly accurate. You can see what's going on inside. Make such an egregious mistake. Okay, they estimated. The one thing you tell me, they said, a few weeks, couple hours, they could estimate that. They say, yeah, person, you better get here right away. Person's not going to make it through the night. Sometimes they make it through the night, sometimes they don't. Yeah, it could be, 2 days later, whatever. They estimate what they see. Okay. But, in this case, they blew it. They totally blew it. So, medicine's not 100% infallible here. People swear by it. They want, as I always say, one thing about COVID, what do you think? Too many people died by it because they had it in their system and the numbers are skewed. Even if that's true, one thing for sure, one thing we can say for sure is it made the medical establishment look very stupid. That's what it did. That I don't think anyone would disagree. That's 100% true. It made them look stupid. They didn't know what to do. At the beginning, they for sure didn't know what to do, and then people died because they know how to deal with it. Then they died. They starved to death. There are cases people starved to death. Yeah, medicine's not infallible. The problem is doctors sometimes play God. They think they know better, and they have no moral code. What's their moral code? Hospital needs beds. This person's taking up a bed, so knock them off. Put them in hospice. Give them barely the amount to live. They'll die, right? We use bed for someone who's got the ability to live. Where are people going to be ready to die? Everyone's told me, this was like 20 years ago. 28 years ago, must have been his early 70s. He goes, if I go near a hospital, they're already ready to put me in the ground. Going to use me like a science experiment. It's like really graphic. He says, yeah, they just think I'm a piece of flesh and stick me in the ground. Scientific experimentation. I started to laugh. He said, see, even you think it's true. I said, I'm just trying to think of you like a scientific experimentation. That's a bad thing to do. But it's just like, I started to laugh just the way he was like telling it. It's like I can't even go within like, a certain circumference around the hospital. Drag me in and kill me. That's what they want. Old people don't deserve to live. And guy in ours, almost 100. We should be well. But like you get a certain age, and they don't want to deal with you. They just want to put you out of their own misery. And like this woman's mother, they had people come in to hammer her. What do you want to do these heroics for? It's not really going to help anyway. It's really, get your priorities straight, like trying to convince this person to die. And this person lived another 9 years, another 10 years. They are ready to put her in the ground. Nothing to talk about. Yeah, so a person, you have to know how to live, you have to know how to die, but you also have to know, what's permissible, what's not permissible. Because there are a lot of things that people do that's murder. Let's say someone's suffering, they're gonna die. I know of a case like this also. They know they're gonna die. But I said we're gonna get off topic. They know they're gonna die. And what do? So the kids say, the suffering so much, they person had a pacemaker. So they got the pacemaker. So I asked the doctor, I said, the person's gonna die? They said, yeah. Within 8 hours, 10 hours. They cut the pacemaker, 2 hours. So anytime, so the Mishnah says explicitly, Mishnah says you hasten someone's death, that's murder. That's murder. And I heard this with my own ears, and that's what a daughter of this person said. They said we couldn't see them suffer so much. So we cut off the pacemaker. I mean, I tried to have a straight face. But I'm thinking to myself, you just murdered it. Just murdered their own father. Person's going to die anyway. He's going to say, so what's the difference? Right? That's what people would say. You're going to die anyway. What do you care? Because there's an ethical Torah issue here. You're not allowed to hasten someone's death. And if no person's going to die, and let's say someone's chopping wood, another example. The Mishnah says someone's chopping wood, it's stopping them from dying. You stop them from chopping. You're going to allow them to die. But if you hasten their death in any way, one example is you shut their eyes and they die. Anything you do to hasten someone's death is murder. We look at it as murder. There's no difference if you took that person and shot him in the head. You can say it's a huge difference. This is mercy. Where do you have the right, the gall to say I can play God? People do it. People definitely do it. They'll determine what's quality of life. Who gives you the right to determine what's quality of life? Right? It says in the book of Genesis, God breathed the spirit of life to man, gave us a soul. God giveth, God taketh away. You don't have a right to do that. Right? That's murder. And if it happens, what happened to God over here? God allowed it to happen. He didn't stop them. He could have. He didn't. So they're liable for murder, but who gives you the right to take away a soul? That's the Malach HaMavet. That's the angel of death. That's his job. Right? God gives him the ability to do it. When and where and how and all that. He gives them the ability when the person is liable to die. And the person not liable to die, who gives you the right? They're going to say, but people have free will. Oh, they do. You're right. People can choose evil 100%. And people can choose, and people can change their mentality. People can change their moral compass. And their moral compass will say, I think this is too much. I think the person is taking too much. So we're going to end it. I mean, there's a story of a young adult in the 20s got in a terrible car accident that was was basically in a coma. And this person could see and hear everything, just couldn't hear him say anything. Right? Was aware of everything going on. And he kept hearing his parents, discuss, should they pull the plug? They shouldn't. He's like screaming. He's like screaming at the top of his lungs. Don't kill me, don't kill me. But obviously they couldn't hear him. Right? How do I know the story? Because in the end, they decided not to do it, and the person came out of it and told the story. He told the story. He was a soul in the body, but he could hear and see everything, just couldn't move. Right? He was comatose. Body was comatose. And this was going on for a long time. They decided what to do. Should they do it? Shouldn't they do it? How long are they keep him like this? And even if it comes out of it, right? It's probably going to be a vegetable anyway. That was one of the arguments again. For to pull the plug. You want your son to come back. It'll be a vegetable at best, and this and that. He came out of it because God gave him his soul back, and he came out of it. And he told the story. He said, "You think you know what's going on? You see someone lying there. You have no idea." Another story. How does a doctor become religious? He has a patient on a respirator, right? And the family decided to pull the plug. So he pulled the plug, the patient died. That night, that soul comes to the doctor in a dream. And he tells the doctor, and the soul screaming at the doctor in his dream, "You murdered me, you killed me, I was lying there. All I needed was, a few more days, a few more weeks. I would have gone straight into paradise. That was my story, my suffering in this world. You killed me, you murdered me." Doctor wakes up in a sweat. You have a dream like that. You have a dream like that. So I shook him up. It totally shook him up. Yeah. Next night, same dream. "You murdered me. You're a murderer." Yeah. Eventually, this doctor became an Orthodox Jew. Yeah. How do I know? I heard the story. Told the story himself. Wasn't third hand. Heard it from him. But what we see, so what's the point? What we see in this world, we don't understand. We don't understand. You see a person, person lying there, a person's in a coma, and the doctors will tell you, yeah, person's going to be brain damaged. He'll never be able to walk again. Never be able to talk and this and that, and all that. You have no idea. That's that person's own harbor right there. Right there. He could be suffering in this world. That could be it. There is one caveat, I would say. There's a Mabit, one of the great early commentaries. And he writes when it comes to repentance, he wrote a book called Beis Elokim, right? The house of God. And in there he's got a whole chapter on tshuva, on repentance. So one of the things he says is that if a person suffering by itself, he holds, is not enough to uproot terrible things he might have done. Because we heard suffering is a great thing. Suffering wipes away a lot of transgressions. Definitely wipes away a lot of transgressions. Comes on the Mabit. And the Mabit says, you know what? That only wipes away transgressions when you acknowledge where it comes from. If you say, woe to me, I'm suffering and this is terrible and I just want to die, get me a casket, and a relative like that one. I got, can't hear, can't see this. I'm ready to die. I didn't think she looked that bad. And then a week later, she died. Okay, so you don't go by what I see. But in general, at the end of the day, we're not calling the shots. We don't understand what we see. So someone there, seemingly quote unquote suffering, their suffering right there could be their portion in the next world. According to the Mabit, though, you have to acknowledge where it comes from. You have to acknowledge it's coming from God himself. And that's an atonement. It's an atonement for my sins. If you acknowledge that, then it's an atonement. Right? Otherwise, if you don't acknowledge it, suffering itself, according to the Mabit, is not enough. You have to acknowledge it. Well, what if you're not conscious? According to the Mabit, yeah, that's a good question. Others would hold suffering atones even without that. But think about it. Mabit's got a point. He's got a very good point. Why should suffering be enough? Right? Why should suffering be enough without acknowledging where it comes from? That's the Mabit's claim. If a person acknowledges where it comes from, yeah, that's a good question. Right? That's a very good point. You acknowledge it comes from God himself. You acknowledge it comes from God. You get atonement. And if you don't, according to the Mabit, you don't. So others would take exception. Others would say suffering atones no matter what. No matter what. Right? That's a big discussion. This is a big discussion. So what do we take from this? We take one very simple idea. Anything that happens to us, it's because that's what God wants. In general, yeah, we may make bad decisions, a lot of bad decisions, so there are repercussions. That's true. Is that what God wants? No. But God will punish when he has to. And we have to acknowledge it's because of what we do. And even if a person wants to say, which they can't, but let's say they want to say they're squeaky clean, right? They really haven't sinned that much, let's say, but it's not true. And they're going to say what? They're going to say, I haven't done anything wrong. So it must be everything I'm going through now is because of my soul. It's because of what my soul has to go through. Now, that's partially true. There are certain things that our soul has to go through, right, in this world, because we're all pretty much reincarnated souls. So if that's true, our soul has to go through certain things. Definitely has to go through certain things, not based on what we did right now. It's based on what our soul did before. So I'm going to say it's not fair. Not a question about being fair. There's payback. Soul didn't do certain things or whatever. God gave another chance to come to this world. But sometimes, that soul's going to have to suffer, for what it did previously. So a good example of that is a person's born mentally challenged, autistic, anything. Yeah. Or they have, dread disease their whole life and they can't function properly. Right? Mentally challenged is a good example. Is it the kid's fault? No. Not punished. When does the punishment come in this world? Either the age of 13 or the age of 20. So punishment when a child is born cannot be. So then what's going on? You're going to say, okay. You could say, well, it's their bad luck. Parents' bad luck. And what if they didn't get genetically tested for certain diseases, and that happened? Okay. But things do not happen for no reason, right? We may not understand it, right? But it's not punishment over here. How do I know it's not punishment? Simple logic. Logic would tell me that it can't be, because the person is not punished from the age of 13 to the age of 20. So when a child's born, they're mentally challenged. It's not the child's fault. So what's going on? It's going on with the soul. This is what the soul has to go through. Why? So I can't answer. Whatever the soul has to go through in this world, coming back, whatever it has to fix up, that's what it has to do. Is it the parent's fault? No. Is it the body's fault, the child's body's fault? No. It's just that soul's in a messed up body. That's why the Chazon Ish, Rav Avram Yishai Karlitz, a blessed memory, anytime he saw a person like that, that was mentally challenged, he would stand up for them as a sign of honor. You can say, but the person's got 25 IQ, or less. Why would he stand up for it? Because he understood it's an elevated soul. It's just the elevated soul's in a messed up body. Totally messed up body. And you see, let's say, whether you hold by it or not, let's say by autistic children, they're much brighter than a lot of others. They have greater knowledge than others. Yeah. They're closer to the source than others. It's just that they got other issues. Some of them could be severely handicapped. Some of them could just, have social issues. Could be, a lot of people today would say, okay, maybe not autistic per se, but it's on the ACD, on the autistic spectrum, so to speak, because they have other issues. They have other, let's say, social issues, but, brain-wise, their, brain capacity is a lot greater than a lot of other people. Yeah, but they have other issues. What do you think? Again, someone's really bad, so to speak, and they have, and they communicate through facilitation. So, some people hold the facilitation, some people say no, and you hear what an autistic child says and about the future and different things. And, some people hold by it, some people don't, whatever it is, but, that's what's going on. They're in a messed up body. It could be, we'll throw out, one possible explanation. Let's say, in a previous life, they were really cruel to others. Yeah, they stomped on people, they bullied people, they were obnoxious to people, different things. Yeah, so they want an opportunity to get their soul fixed up. So what happens? God can say, okay, I'll give you an opportunity, but you're not going to be able to do anything in this world. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do anything. You won't be able to feed yourself, to cure your needs. And why would a soul sign up for that? Because it's going to get its true atonement afterwards. Yeah, when they die, when that person dies. Okay. So again, it's going to be measure for measure. Someone, I'm not going to say all, mentally challenged people, that's the reason. It could be, any number of reasons, why this could happen. But think, someone took advantage of others, bullied others, this and that. God could say, okay, I'll give you a chance, but I'm going to use you in this world like a doormat. You're not going to be able to do anything for yourself. You won't be able to think for yourself. You won't be able to take care of any of your needs. You won't even be able to speak. All you'll be able to do is grunt. You'll be like an animal. You'll be able to grunt. People will never understand you. Yeah. So a soul may say, yeah, I'll do it. Put me in that type of body. Let me get fixed up. Other people may say, I don't want to do that. I'll take Adam. I'll suffer other ways. Yeah, but it's measure for measure, right? Not, I don't know how to put it in words. A lot of things we see, as we mentioned, we don't understand. But God has infinite wisdom. So God knows exactly what he's doing, even if we don't understand it. Because the person can say, why are I stuck in this family and these parents and this and that? Was the Bishop Perkey will say, I'll get there when I'm about 95. And that is your born against your will, you die against your will. You have no control. Do we have any control our siblings are? No. Parents? No. Relatives? No. Socioeconomic situation? No. But God determines the best fit for that soul and that body. You're going to say, okay, I got a question. I got a lot of questions. I could ask. Everybody could ask the same questions. Could all ask the same questions. Say, life's not fair. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Different things. And a person would say, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be in a family of X, Y, and Z, whatever. I didn't sign up for that. It's not what I wanted. I'm not saying it's so bad. Some people have it worse. Some people have it better, right? Without even going into this topic. But you don't have a choice. And we believe God knows what he's doing, right? And God knows everything is for the best. We may not think so. We definitely may not think so. We may have a lot of questions. That could be very true. But at the same time, we believe he knows what he's doing. And some of the suffering that we have to go through, that let's say is not in our control. There's certain things that happen to a person not in their control at all. They didn't ask for it. They didn't want it. It happened against their will, right? It could be many things, many horrific things. So I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up to come to this world for that. Okay, you didn't. Your soul did, obviously, for whatever reason. And it's payback for who knows what. Doesn't mean a person can go through a trauma. Doesn't mean, a person may not need other help. Okay. Right. But, at the end of the day, what's the bigger picture? See, the bigger picture is not going to get rid of the trauma. Right. We're not going to make that mistake. Not going to get rid of the trauma. Just trying to make sense out of it. You're going to say, well, it's random. Not random. Totally not random. If somebody, you tell me, did it to themselves, they had it coming to them for different reasons. That I can hear. They asked for it. Yeah? They asked for it in different ways. If you're going to tell me it's totally against their will, now there are only a couple options. One option is life is random. That's one option. You're bad luck. That's why, one of Job's friends gave him this explanation. Yeah, it's the way the stars were, and because the way the stars were set up when you were born, this is supposed to happen, that's supposed to happen, and all that. So it's your bad luck. Yeah, it's either your bad luck or it's random or the same thing. That's one option, which probably a lot of people would say that's the only option. Yeah, life is random. You don't know, right? We'll say life isn't fair, but it doesn't mean it's random, right? It's a big difference. But there's another explanation. The other explanation is everything's calculated. And if everything's calculated, even though we have free will, even though free will may be limited, we do have free will. But at the same time, things could happen to a person not of their choice. They didn't do anything to do it. They didn't do anything to deserve it. At all. It's not right by any stretch. People will pay the price for what they do 100%. God created evil. He allowed people to tap into it. He didn't want to, but he had to give people free choice. That's what the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem. Says pretty clear. God gave everyone free choice. You want to tap into evil, you can. He doesn't want you to, but you could. 100% you could. So that's the balance in the world, right? Between good and evil. See, that's what the Christians have a problem with. You look at Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. What does God say? God created good and evil. See, the Christians, one of the many things they change the interpretation, change what it says. Because where does all evil come from if you're a Christian? From Mr. S, the Satan, the evil inclination, angel of death, whatever you want to call him. That's where evil is. But if God created evil, they got a problem. So they have to retranslate it. They have to mistranslate it, so to speak. So then people ask, well, if you're saying that, isn't it true? God is evil? No. God not evil at all. God is all good. It's sometimes, only good comes from God, as Chofetz Chaim says. Yeah, it's just sometimes it's hard to see the good. Right? It's hard to see. But God gives people the right to choose. They can go the right way, they can go the wrong way. It's their choice. Everyone makes a choice. And if there be no rhyme or reason for anything, then whatever person made their choice, they made their choice. There shouldn't be punishment. They did what they would. They did what they wanted to do. So why something's right, something's wrong? Because the Torah tells me. Person's liable, nothing to talk about, right? Even someone does something so, so horrific, And you're going to tell me, but that's what my soul had to go through. 100% is what my soul had to go through. For whatever reason, to get fixed up. And now the body suffers, the soul suffers, okay. Now you're going to tell me that person's not liable? That person comes along and does what it's supposed to do. God didn't tell that person to do it. They did it themselves. Just like the Egyptians, right? The Torah says, by Abraham, your progeny is going to go into a nation not their own. They're going to suffer there. Very good. I mean, not so good, but very good. He didn't say it's going to be the Egyptians. We understood it's going to be the Egyptians, so why are they punished? They're doing God's will. No. They jumped up, said, we're going to do it. Okay. But they're liable. They went too far. They went way too far. So God knocked them off in a major way. So God knows what's going to happen. It's not predestination here. They have, by us, meaning that I don't have a right to do whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. I want to go have a shrimp sandwich right now. I can do it if I can find it. Or do any other transgression. No one's putting a gun to my head. Doesn't God know what I'm going to do? He knows. He knows I'm going to point like this right now. He knows. Yeah, does that give me free will? Still gives me free will. So you're going to say, but that soul had it coming anyway. And this person was just a messenger. God could have used a lot of messengers, okay. This person takes the bull by the horns. He's the messenger. Is he guilty? Guilty. Totally guilty. Person runs a red light, smashes into a car. God used that person as a stick, like you take a stick and you hit a dog. Dog goes after the stick. We're going to go after the person who hit us in the car. But God used that person as a messenger. Totally, the messenger. Yeah. Is that person liable? Oh, yeah. Right? Person's 100% liable. Nothing to talk about. All right, but God wanted him to do it? No. This person chose to do it. God used him as a messenger. Okay, but he's guilty. He's 100% guilty. Right? And that person, whoever got damaged or the car got damaged or whatever, okay, they have to go through this inconvenience. Whether it's medical bills, getting your car fixed, all kinds of things you have to go through. Why? You have a coming for some reason. You have to take a loss. God's giving you a wake-up call. Right? Doesn't want to have to hit in your body. That's the last resort. So what does God do? Hit you in the pocket before that. And even before that, he'll do something around you or something to wake you up to repent. Right? We'll do it in the other order. So if God does that, you don't repent, God can hit you in the pocket. You can lose money. Right? Dental expenses, car expenses, other things. If that doesn't work, at some point, God's okay. You leave me no choice. You're not waking up. I have to hit you in the body. And anything that we get hit with in the body, any sickness has to do with spiritual illness. There's no such thing as a physical illness. It has nothing to do with spirituality. There are diseases. We don't know what the cause is. Okay, so what? The diseases are caused by what we do. That's what they're caused by. Spiritual diseases. That's exactly what Lashon Hara was. It was a spiritual disease, came out, it was a spiritual thing and manifested in a physical way. What was it for? What was Saras for? Whatever you want to call it. Saras was for speaking Lashon Hara. I mean, we don't see it today. Our soul, feels it, but we don't necessarily see it, or maybe we don't necessarily feel it either when a person speaks Lashon Hara, but when a Jew speaks Lashon Hara, but physical maladies come from spiritual imperfection. That's where it comes from. The heart represents certain things, kidneys represent certain things, the liver represents certain things, right? So if God forbid someone's sick, someone's sick. Let's say what's the most important organ in the body? Is the heart. Or as they say in Boston, the heart, right? Person has heart problems. Yeah. What does the heart do? The heart's the entire, pumps blood the entire parts of the body, right? Biology 101, right? That's what it does. Keeps the body strong. If your heart's weak, your body's weak, right? In general. You need brain flow, you need the oxygen to the brain, all that, true. But what's the essence of a person? It's the heart, right? If the heart stops beating, the person dies. Right? So there's a question, if the heart's still beating, but his brain dead, okay, there's a whole difference of opinion. Do we go by brain death or by the heart has to stop beating, but we're not going to go there either. The point is, that's the essence of the body. So we say every day in the Shema, third paragraph, don't go after your heart, don't go after your eyes, right? Don't go after your heart means don't desire things, don't want things. Yeah, I'm not saying, again, not saying you can't want anything, but I'm saying don't go after your heart's desires. Because a lot of times your heart's desires, if you don't have the brain capacity to have this conflict between the brain and the heart to know what to do, the heart can go crazy. The heart can say, yeah, I want this, I desire the other thing, right? The heart has to be strong physically and spiritually. Right now, would I come out and say to specific individuals, oh, you have heart problems, so you must have desire problems. Could be that's true. To see who I'm speaking to, whether they can, handle certain things. But there are, spiritual maladies that are caused in a physical way. Kidneys, for instance, what's the function of the kidneys? To give advice. Person gives bad advice. Again, if I can say 100%, person gave bad advice, led someone astray, and now they have kidney failure. Is that a direct thing? We don't know what goes on in the world. I'm just talking in generalities. Yeah, but it's brought down that, kidneys are there for advice. Now, a person gives bad advice and really bad advice, different things cause other people to sin. Could that cause kidney problems? Sure. 100% it could. Can you say 100% that that's the case? Okay. We don't know anything in this world. I'll give another example, right? Well, I'm on a roll here. I'll give another example. There are four major death penalties if there would be a temple in Jerusalem today, right? The most severe is what we call skila, right? What is skila? Skila means you take someone to like a third-story building, you pick them up from their hips, and you throw them on their head. Now, if that doesn't kill them, you take a big rock, you aim for the heart. So you know what they say? The left one doesn't get you, the right one will. Now, what is the punishment? Why would someone get skila if the temple existed? That's the creation of Shabbos in public. And you got warned for the right category, right? Homosexuality, that's also skila. That's the most severe punishment. We'll take the rabbis at their word. Next most severe punishment is sreifa, right? What is sreifa? Burning, meaning they would hold the person's mouth open, pour molten lead down your throat. Wow, that sounds pretty bad. Yeah, basically your insides will explode and you'll die, right? What's the punishment for that? Why would someone get skila? Sreifa. Adultery, right? It's one thing. One thing would be adultery. Then you have two others. You have hereg, where you get your head chopped off, or chenek, where you get choked to death, right? So that's the order, either hereg or chenek. I forget it's chenek or hereg. I think it's hereg and chenek. That's the order. Meaning you got skila is the most severe. You got sreifa, being burnt after that, molten lead, and I think you have hereg and chenek, being head cut off and having being choked to death, right? That's the last one. Being choked to death could mean person drowns, right? That's one way of suffocating, in different ways. Now, the Gemara says that even though we don't have it today, right? No one really got that penalty anyway, for different reasons, but that's how severe some of these prohibitions are. Regardless, even if it doesn't exist today in that form, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist at all. You're gonna say, what do you mean? Give an example. Okay. One example is, let's say, God forbid, a person is killed in a car accident, head-on collision, or side collision, car flips over, person dies. Yeah, whatever it is, won't get gruesome here. What happens? How could we view it? That's impact, right? Some level it's impact. That's how they get killed. Get crushed in the car, whatever it is, impact. What is skila? Being thrown off a 3-story building. It's impact. So now someone will say, what, everyone gets killed in a car accident, that's skila? I'm not going to say that. I'm just saying that it could be. That's a form of divine punishment in this world. Yeah, if the temple doesn't exist, you could say, well, that's similar. That's similar to it. Could I say 100% or 90% or 80%? That's what the person got? No one's a prophet today. Nobody knows. Say someone's killed in a fire, right? It happens. People get killed in fires. Yeah, or a tragic accident, someone was killed in a car. How'd they die? Car exploded. They didn't get to them quick enough. They all burned to death. I don't know, 3 people, 4 people in a car, whatever. It's like I think it was like a head-on collision, whatever. That's not what killed them. Yeah, so they got both. They got impact, and they got burnt. Now again, I wouldn't go to the bereaved family and say, well, you're probably liable for a death penalty, so that's what happened. Obviously, it's not the right thing to say, at all. I'm just pointing out that the Gemara says just because we don't have that form of punishment today, i.e. in the temple for these things, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist in other ways. But could a person pinpoint and say, this is what happened? No. Right? I'm not making that claim. Right? I'm not a prophet. I'm not a son of a prophet. I don't know anyone's going to make such a claim. At the same time, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Doesn't mean that. So you take someone who's liable for a death penalty. And what happens? Let's say they drown. What happens? People drown. They get pulled under or whatever the case is. That's what being choked is. Right? And it means you don't have any breath. You're suffocating. Right? Now, somebody drowns. You're going to say, well, that's the punishment. We don't know. I'm pointing out, very well could be. God's exacting revenge, and we don't understand how it works. God hasn't spoken to me recently. I don't think he's speaking to anybody except imbeciles and little children. Right? So there's no prophecy today. On the lowest level, there's divine inspiration. That's not prophecy. Right? The lowest level. Right? So yeah, there are great rabbis that might have it. No one else will have it today. For sure not. But I'm saying these things can exist in this world. We can't pinpoint and say that's the reason. Nobody can. Nobody. I'm just saying it doesn't mean it's not. I don't care if it's, it's young people, it's older people, it's anywhere in between. Doesn't matter. They could look like the most righteous people. Okay, we don't know. We don't know. Bottom line. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? That's the point on that. So yeah, there are a bunch of questions here. Let me see. Someone asked at the beginning, but it only took me an hour and a half to get there. Someone asked, the reason why eating flesh with blood is forbidden is because the text says because life is all in the flesh. Okay. Blood was the essence of life, cannot be eaten, but instead reserved for the priest to return to God. Okay. Yeah, we're not allowed to eat blood. Jews, let's make clear. Jews are not allowed to eat blood. Right? Non-Jews, they want to eat. They want to eat blood. Most non-kosher meat, I would say, they don't work hard getting the blood out. You might say, oh, it's disgusting, this and that. They don't add a lot of salt. That's why, kosher meat is very salty for that reason. They put a ton of salt to draw out the blood, right? Because the blood is considered the soul. That's right. Even though science hasn't proven it, which is very true. Science hasn't proven we are what we eat. That's one of the reasons Jews do not eat non-kosher meat for that reason, right? And you're not allowed to eat blood because we say we'll take on some of these character traits of these, carnivores. We don't eat animals that eat other animals, right? We don't eat animals that eat vegetation. But you're right, 100%, that life is the essence of the person, right? Is the essence, of the animal. That's why we don't eat blood. Now, a non-Jew could say, I only want to eat kosher meats, and I'm not going to convert. So I want to eat kosher because of this. Doesn't apply to non-Jews, right? Non-Jews eat all kinds of things. Kli Yakar says, the Book of Leviticus Chapter 11. Kli Yakar says that non-Jews eat all kinds of things. Doesn't affect them, right? Maybe except eating the bats in Wuhan. That might be a discussion. But they eat a lot of things. They don't die from it. Doesn't cause them any problems. So why would a non-Jew want to keep kosher? Doesn't benefit them. Has no effect on them. Right? Essentially, it doesn't. So the Kli Yakar says the non-Jew is never going to do anything that's no benefit for them. Right? I hear these super Noahites say, no, you have to keep kosher. You got an obligation to keep kosher. Different things. You don't have to eat clean animals. Yeah, that's for Jews. Doesn't apply to non-Jews. Non-Jews want to eat blood. They can eat as much blood as they want. Shouldn't be an issue. It's not going to affect them. Right? And the Kli Yakar makes a very good point. He says, you see, non-Jews eat all kinds of things. Doesn't affect them. You got to tell me, science hasn't proven this yet. But what's the first, what's the reason in general many secular Jews are 100% apathetic when it comes to Torah mitzvahs? They don't want to hear about Torah mitzvahs. It's kind of like trying to start a Humvee with a 9-volt. Like, they're not interested. They're apathetic. They'll claim to be atheist or maybe agnostic or whatever. They don't have anything to do with religion. Why? The Gemara comes along and says, if a Jew eats something that's not, eats non-kosher, right? It plays on the word. It's going to make you impure. The word purity the word is tameh, makes you impure. So they say it's going to make you nitamtem. Play on the words of tameh. What does nitamtem mean? It's going to dull the spirit. What does it mean? It's going to dull the spirit of a Jew. It means they're going to be apathetic. They're going to be apathetic to Torah mitzvahs. Yeah, it's like you need a nuclear bomb to go off in front of them in order for them to see anything Torah mitzvahs at all, right? Because now this doesn't apply to a non-Jew. Now, a non-Jew says I got an obligation. They don't have an obligation. They want to keep kosher. They could. Kli Yakar says, why would a non-Jew do it if it's not going to affect them? There's no benefit for them in such a case. Not only that, it's a lot cheaper to eat other stuff. You want to spend $20 a pound on meat? Okay. Why would someone do that? They wouldn't do that. Thanksgiving, butterball, non-kosher turkey, 99 cents a pound. Well, it's probably up now. But let's say I was growing up, 99 cents a pound, 39 cents a pound. Yeah. Kosher turkey costs you $5 a pound, at least. At least. Kli Yakar says a non-Jew would never do it. But there's an obvious question. And the question is, but science hasn't proven it. Science has not proven we are what we eat. Very true. But I don't think science hasn't proven it. Doesn't mean it's not true. Right? But the Gemara says what it does is it dulls the spirit, makes you apathetic. So therefore, when a secular Jews become religious, that's one of the first things they should do. Besides keeping Shabbos is also very important. And that is, you get this other garbage out of your system, and then you can hear what the Torah says. But if you don't get this garbage out of your system, you can't hear what Torah says. It's just about impossible, to hear what Torah says. They're apathetic. Someone who's apathetic, very hard to get them to see beyond anything what the Torah says. Oh, that's your opinion. They'll come up with all kinds of other ideas. They'll tell me my heart tells me. So what? Your heart tells you. It doesn't mean anything. Right? But they're the biggest proponents of all the, perversiveness and other things going on in the world. Yeah, because their heart tells them what to do. They have no morality. Morality is relative. Morality changes. Yeah. So any non-Jew is going to say, yeah, but I have an obligation, this and that. If you're in the process of conversion, it's one thing. Even then, you don't have an obligation, but, definitely good to practice at some point before conversion. But at the end of the day, someone who's not in the process of conversion, why would they do it? Why should they do it? Doesn't affect them. Right? The Kli Yakar says clear. A person's not going to do anything, doesn't affect them. There's no purpose. Yeah, but some people tell you, these super Noahites, or whatever you want to call them, right? They're going to come out and say, no, got an obligation, it's a Torah obligation, I can't eat unclean things. What are you talking about? Why does that apply to non-Jews? It doesn't apply to non-Jews. They want to do it, it's their choice. Obligation, nothing. But the Kli Yakar's got a very good point. Right? He's telling you, don't straddle the lines. It doesn't affect you. Why would you do it? Because I identify with it. Forget identification. It doesn't do anything. It's like taking a placebo. Yeah? Be part of a scientific experiment, and they give you a placebo. Let's say you're getting a placebo. Maybe in your mind it's going to affect certain things. It's a placebo. Sugar and water, whatever else they put in it. Is it going to do anything to help affect something? No. Doesn't do anything. That's why it's called a placebo. So kosher food for a non-Jew is like a placebo. Not so popular to say, but that's what it is. Doesn't do it. It doesn't affect them. For a Jew, it's got a major effect. For Jews that can't listen to Torah or mitzvahs or hear anything, it's because they don't keep kosher. One of the main reasons. That's the main thing, fighting against it. Yeah, somebody asks, Somebody asked, let's see, new name they're calling it's neurodivergent. Come on, you can't make this stuff up. Cannot make this stuff up. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I do not know whether to laugh or cry some of this stuff. I don't know. I can't even comment on it. Yeah, someone asks, are we mammals according to the Torah? Why are we mammals? We're different creation. I'll give an example. Monkeys compared to humans, you know what the difference is in DNA? 1%. The 1% difference. Now, they're created on the fifth day, right? So even if you say it's like 5 billion years, and let's say, according to Darwin's theory, it's a mutation every second, right? You don't have enough time mathematically to turn a monkey into a human. Yeah, it's a 1% difference in DNA. Didn't even tell me the world's 15 billion years old. Then you got a paramecium to a hydra to paramecium to a creepy crawly thing to a small creepy crawly thing to a bigger one to this to that to get to a human. Mathematically, doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. The question would be, and I've seen people throw this out there. People will say, "What about Cro-Magnon men? Are they human? It doesn't seem like they're so human, or they're a pre-form of humans, let's say. They're not truly human. They're subhuman. I'm not gonna say they're animals, right? But they're subhuman. Now, what would we answer? What would we answer to that? So the Torah says, I would have thought to say this till I got totally shredded years ago, and that is the Torah says God breathed in the spirit of life, right, into a person, and that means God created man from what? The dust, the four corners of the earth. How did he create man? Man was created in its full form, right? He took a coin. It's like a coin. All humans are the same, right? They come from a certain form, right? Women are going to be a little bit different than men, but they come from the same form, same exact form. Now, if that's true, then how can we ever be considered an animal in certain ways? Because first of all, we have different form. Not only that, we're created, like all animals in creation as, a full-fledged human being. Now, there is one thing to be said, and that is, this is really an ethics idea, and that is that if we do the right thing and we use our animalistic instincts for good, so then we're greater than animals. If we use it for bad, now then we can say we're the pinnacle of creation because we were created last. But if you say that that we only go according to our animalistic instinct, right? We're more or less just a little more intelligent animals, and then animals are greater than us because they're created first. We're totally different creation, right? So I wanted to say once, make an inference to what the Ramban says over there, that maybe there is such a thing as Cro-Magnon man before man got the soul, right? Maybe you could read into it a little bit and say right before God put it in the soul of man, maybe we're more animalistic, more, subhuman, so to speak. But why did I get shredded? Because that's not what it means. That's not what the Ramban meant over there. Yeah. So, and even so, as we understand, every animal and every plant and all that were the first ones were there, created in its full form. So if it's created in its full form, you don't even have the question, right? That really knocks out the question. Somebody asks, what are good questions here? Someone asks, what does tree of good and evil mean? Tree of knowledge. Didn't Adam and Eve have the knowledge of good and evil before? They had a certain level of good and evil. They understood. They understood. Evil was outside of them, meaning that if Adam walked in the forest and he saw a big pit, he understood if he steps in the pit, even though it's like 1,000 feet tall. So you got trying to understand this how it works geographically, right? Nonetheless, or not geographically, whatever it is, right? Nonetheless, if he stepped into a pit, he understands it caused him damage, right? In other words, there were things outside he knew that were bad. That's the opposite of being good. Right? So what happened? He ate from the tree. He ate from the tree and put this evil inside of himself. So now, what did the evil do? What did the evil do? He made a calculation. He said, if I eat it, right? What did Rashi say? He said, right? What was the convincing point of the snake to eat? You'll have your eyes open. You'll be like God, creating and destroying worlds. Right? What does that mean? How can we create or destroy a world? Right? All of a sudden we can make a new universe. We can create a new universe. So, is he talking about technology? No. But we have the ability. When we do things, they have good repercussions, bad repercussions. Right? They'll be good for us, they could be bad for us. Now, when when he ate from the tree of knowledge, Adam made a certain calculation. Calculation was, if I do the right thing, right, I get closer to God exponentially. If I do the wrong thing, I elevate the body and I elevate the soul. If I do the wrong thing, I debase the body and I debase the soul. Why? Because whatever I do wrong, it's like I'm taking 3 steps backwards. Right? So he understood that if I do the right thing exponentially, I get reward. But if I do the wrong thing, exponentially is bad in many ways. Right? So comes along God and says, well, very good. Well, one problem, you're a heretic. God calls Adam, the Gemara says, does not be cursed. Calls him a heretic. Why does he call him a heretic? Right? Why does he call him a heretic? Because God said you're 100% right. If you do the right thing where evil's inside of you, you elevate the body and the soul. You do the wrong thing, just the opposite. But God says I didn't create the world for that, so I had to go to plan B. I had to bring death to the world. You caused death to the world, the worst thing you could have done. Did God know that was going to happen? Yes. He understood it was going to happen. Okay. He definitely understood. Is that what he wanted? Not what he wanted. 100% is not what he wanted. But God had to go to plan B. Then he had to kick him out of the Garden of Eden because there was a tree of life. Now, if they ate from the tree of life, fame, right? They're going to live forever. Oh, but now a person has to die. When a person dies, that's part of atonement, right? As it's brought down, first person you see when you die is Adam Marishon, the first man, and you have to tell him because of what you did, I have to go through death in this whole process. That's part of his atonement, and he acknowledges that's part of his atonement. Yeah. So if they ate from the tree of knowledge, if they ate from the tree of life, they get no atonement. Right? That's why the Torah says you're created from the dust, you have to go back to the dust. Why do you have to go back to the dust? You have to go back to the dust in order to what? In order to get fixed up. Right? That's part of the atonement process. But you're right. They did have a certain level of good and knowledge, but it wasn't inside them. Being inside them is a whole different thing. Right? And even though God acknowledged you're right, and he made a good point, but he called them a heretic because that's not what he created the world for. Someone asks, supposed the Gentile know how to say prayer before eating? Must they? They can. They are definitely allowed to. They are definitely allowed to. Obligation? No. Obligation? No. Could someone be reincarnated as an animal? Yes. 100%. They can be reincarnated into an animal. They can be reincarnated into a rock, an inanimate object. There's a story, Sefer Haredim brings down about an animal that was about to be killed, or next day was going to be slaughtered, and the animals spoke to somebody. I guess it was this person's father. It's reincarnated in this animal. Exactly how the animal spoke, and the person understood him. I don't know, right? But Sefer Haredim tells the story that this animal is going to be abused. So the father, I guess, tells the son, have me ritual slaughter, that'll get me, that'll get my tikkun, I'll be able to get fixed up, and I'll be able to go to Gan Eden, the paradise, but do it quick before they abuse me. So to speak, I think I did a seminar, a number of years ago on reincarnation. And I brought down that whole story. So yeah, so for different things, a person can be reincarnated as an animal, as an inanimate object, as a rock, right? Potentially, I could say, person, let's say, we use the example being a bully, right? If a person was a bully or did other things, in a previous life, then it comes back as a rock. Why? What can a rock do? Nothing. Just lies there, gets thrown around, gets kicked around, can't do anything. Right? Could be that's one of the reasons. Could be other reasons why. But there is a list of things that a person can come back for and why. Someone here says that stroking last year, God punished me for my sins. Yeah, it was merciful. It's atonement and punishment. Yeah, keep in mind, there's justice with mercy. Right? I mentioned this before. How can you have justice with mercy? Seems like a contradiction in terms, right? But let's say someone has a fire in their house, someone does damage in a certain area, no one gets hurt, but it's monetary damage. That's okay, that's judgment, but there's mercy. Person didn't die. Person didn't go through it, didn't suffer more. You could have lost everything. Could have lost their house, could have lost their family, could have lost everything. Right? So that's mercy. Right? But everything that happens to a person has to realize where it comes from. And a person once told me, they're good, everything's good. The only thing, really had bad, quote unquote, in their life, health-wise, was they had an ulcer at one point. I mean, it's pretty much under control, but suffered for that. They're like, they never really had any health issues and this and that. But they're a biking enthusiast. So what happened? One day a few years ago, they were biking down a hill, and say try to take a left at Albuquerque, couldn't find the clutch, was going too fast, got thrown off the bike. Yeah. And basically landed in such a way, broke the collarbone and 5-6 vertebrae. Now, that's extremely painful. Can't imagine not being painful, right? They didn't have to have surgery on the collarbone that healed by itself. And a person breaks vertebrae, what do? Nothing to do, right? It has to heal on its own. So it's painful. The person, had trouble sleeping at night and different things. It took about 2 months. Probably took more. Probably about 2 months, to finally heal. So yeah, a person can be a world expert and, and this and that. And say, they were going too fast down the hill. Yeah, why were they going too fast down the hill? Because God made them go too fast down the hill. And then they couldn't stop, right? There was no way to stop and they got thrown off. Now, they're lucky. Could have landed on their head. Could have broken their head open. Yeah. So yeah, that was a wake-up call. Person didn't get the message, but that was a wake-up call. No question. You say, well, I don't need to see, someone was listening to a class by Noah Weinberger, blessed memory of Aisha Torah, and he was talking about God and God being part of your life and different things. And he said, Rabbi, you don't have to tell me, I was on my motorbike and I was going down the road and I slipped on some oil and I, went over a cliff and I said, God save me. And I reached out, my motorbike got destroyed and there was a tree there. Yeah, ended up in this tree, dusted myself off, whatever, no broken bones, no nothing. So you don't have to tell me about God. Me and God are pretty tight. So Noah Weinberg said, it's a great story. It's an unbelievable story. So I got one question. He said, who threw you off the cliff? Right? Same person I would say, same thing I would say to the other person. You'd say, oh, there's no such thing as God and this and that. And, this wind blew, I came down, I was going too fast and this and that. Very good. So who caused it? Where was the negligence here? You're going to admit it was on your own? You're going to admit someone else is pulling the strings? Well, it never should have happened. Yeah, it never should have happened, but it happened. Yeah. So who threw you off the cliff? Someone asked, piece of Western Wall fell down in a YouTube video. This means something. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think it means that much. Yeah, I also heard about it. I don't think it's significant. I mean, if you tell me it's significant in a sense where, if it falls down, a significant piece of rock, and it killed somebody or killed a few people or something like that, I think that's kind of significant. If you tell me, it fell and okay, let's say nobody got hurt. I don't think anyone got hurt, when it happened. Yeah. So, it's significant in some ways. The fact that, well, you shouldn't have a rock like that attached to the wall, it should come out, right? That shouldn't happen, right? That definitely shouldn't happen. What's the biggest significance? I don't know. And I don't know if I'd put any real significance to it. That, I would say it's pretty miraculous. Where the Temple Mount is, where the mosque is. And they've been digging, I don't know, for whatever reason, the Arabs have been digging under there for years, for a long time. You would think the more they dig, whatever they're digging for, whatever they're doing, you would think that area wouldn't be that stable. Totally wouldn't be stable, but it's still up there. They say that that when the Messiah comes, that's coming down. How's it going to come down? Could come down miraculously, or it's known, I think there's a fault line right underneath the mosque. Yeah, so what could God do? He can make a big earthquake and knock it out, right? Totally destroy it. So there was something a number of years ago. It's called the Evan Shasia, which right. So there's a whole thing about that, about exactly exactly what it is. It's like some say that, as the Gemara says, that the world was created with this Evan Shasias, or some sort of, I don't know, primordial rock or something, right? It's the question, how do we look at it? Do we say that, we take it literal, or not? Some say it's symbolic of the purpose of the world, on which it's founded. That was created first, right? The earth was created first, added to it to expand creation. Others say, the world stands on three things: Torah, Avodah, what do you call it? What's it called? Sacrifices, and the performance of chesed, right, etc. And the world began with one bedrock, etc. That's one thing. Yeah, there was a thing where that it leaked water at some point. They want to say that's significant of the of the Messianic era, and what it's supposed to be, that's really supposed to be later, so to speak. So whatever, there's the whole thing with that also, that people wanted to make something out of it that maybe has to represent Messianic times, and things like that. But again, we don't we don't really we don't really know. We don't really know. Could be, I don't know, someone left something there and it started to leak under there. I don't know. It could be. Someone mentions, it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Large boulder from the western wall is dislodged. Okay. Yeah, the question is, doesn't really pose any, any significance other than that. Other than that. Or it's just, okay, very interesting, came out. Not something that really should have happened, but deeper, if we look at it a little bit deeper, doesn't really mean anything. I don't know if we take anything more significant from it. Someone asked, a non-Jewish person learned from the 613 laws applied to their own lives. It depends what it is. I would say moral issues, yeah. I would say a lot of things a person could learn out. First of all, you talk about less than half the mitzvahs, because most of the mitzvahs don't apply today. There are a lot of mitzvahs that more than half of the mitzvahs don't apply. So even the ones that do apply, I would say they don't apply directly to a non-Jew. It could be morally they do, right? Because I mentioned many times they're moral issues. There are moral imperatives that non-Jews should keep, even if they're not obligated, right? Lashon hara, I would say, they're not obligated. Non-Jews not obligated to not speak badly against others. I think it's a good moral imperative. I think it'd be good for a person not to backstab anybody, or say things even if it's true. All right, it's just morally, I think it's good for their it's good for their soul. It's good for who they are, instead of just like trashing people left and right, even if they deserve it, right? So if there are things you learn as like a moral imperative, could you put it actively in your life? Yeah. If it's a moral, it's a moral imperative. If it's something you're taking things from the Jews and doing what Jews do, yeah, that's a different, that's a different, that's a different issue. That I would say is a different issue, but you could, you definitely could. But again, you do not want to go down a slippery slope whereas, and this comes up a lot, unfortunately, where non-Jews want to do more than they're obligated to do, and they run into problems doing things like Jews do, or coming close to doing things like Jews do. Right, so there's I shouldn't say it's a fine line. There's either you want to do things like a Jew or things like a non-Jew, right? Things that are permissible for non-Jews to do, okay, yeah, and if they're permissible, I don't have an issue with it. If they're not permissible, non-Jews shouldn't do it. If it's something where it's a moral imperative and it's a benefit for them, yeah, even though they're not obligated, I would say, yeah, it's a good thing to do. It's a moral imperative. Yeah, kashrus isn't one of them. Right? Because that is no moral imperative, right? That doesn't apply, right? You want to tell me, I'll give an example, premarital sex, yeah? Even if it's two consenting adults, doesn't matter, right? We're not talking about where people are living together. Let's say it'd be permissible, let's say. And they're going to get married. Everyone knows they're going to get married, and it's only a matter of time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, good thing to do or not a good thing to do morally? Probably say morally it's not a good thing to do. Yeah? Is there anything wrong with it? Technically? No. The only question is, is there an issue with spilling seed? And that wouldn't necessarily be an issue with that, right? That would be necessarily an issue with it. Further, spilling seed by themselves, that's major disagreement, major disagreement among the commentaries for a non-Jew. Major disagreement. Whether it's permitted or not, and many would say they shouldn't do it, right? They definitely shouldn't do it. But premarital sex, who would say that's a problem, right? I would say morally, I think it's a problem. Especially if you're younger, no matter two consenting adults, right? It's these things mess people up, when people are more, physically inclined or whatever. It does, it's just, you go watch the movie When Harry Met Sally, right? I'm dating myself, but yeah, physicality always gets in the way, it's no question, that person's going to get married. They know they're going to get married, this and that, and there's no doubts and everything else, and nothing's going to happen to stop that. So you tell me, so what's the problem? Two consenting adults, what's the issue? Yeah, so I'm just saying, possibly that could be a moral issue. It could be a moral imperative. Would anyone say it's forbidden in that sense? No. If it's someone you're allowed to be with, why should it be forbidden? Right? I mean, those are just two examples, a lot of things. There are a lot of things like that could be certainly moral imperatives that, yeah, it's a good thing for a non-Jew to do. Obligatory? No. But to make them better people for abiding by them. Can a non-Jewish person say prayers from the Siddur? That's the problem. Some things they could. Some things that are universal, 100% they could. Yeah, there is a problem because most prayers in a prayer book, if you look at them, apply to Jews. Yeah, apply to Jews. Jewish redemption, Messiah, different things apply to them. Things that apply universally, they could say, not a problem. Right? But if you look at a prayer book, there are a lot of things that would not apply to them. They would definitely not apply to them. Why? For that reason. Because they really apply to Jews. So, I would say I think there are a few Noahide prayer books out there that I think are good that a Noahide can use, but a Jewish prayer book is a problem. It's a problem because I venture to say majority of things that are there they don't apply. They don't apply at all. So if it's universal, okay. If it applies to both Jews and non-Jews, then there's no issue. If they don't apply to both, they only apply to Jews, then yeah. So go through it and pick out whatever doesn't apply, right? Whatever doesn't apply to non-Jews, whatever applies to Jews, don't say. But that's going to be the majority of the prayer book. That's what's gonna come about. Any other questions? You guys keep me on my toes here. All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Sunday, usually 9 o'clock Eastern time. How about saying the Shema? You can say the Shema. That's not a problem. Certainly saying Shema Yisrael. Here is with the Lord our God. The Lord is one. Right? That you could say. Maybe even I would say, maybe I'll throw in the first paragraph. The other two don't apply. The other two paragraphs don't apply. Right? But certainly saying Shema is a good thing. No question. That definitely no question. Yeah, so I do this every Sunday, usually 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Again, do apologize for a little bit of late start. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or orthodoxconversion.com, or at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I have videos on Torah portion of the week, Book of Leviticus Chapter 15, 16, 17, and anything before. Also, Q&As, controversial issues. And you can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. We're having a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, depending where you are, almost end of the day.